Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're plunging into something pretty fascinating. How do you actually measure the, let's call it viewership and the economic pulse of a place like La Plaza del Mercado de Santos, that amazing market and cultural spot in Puerto Rico? It's not exactly a TV show where you can just check the ratings, is it? So yeah, how do we even start to figure out its real impact?
Well, that's exactly what we're trying to do here in this deep dive. We've pulled together insights from, various sources to try and estimate La Placida's foot traffic and its direct economic impact. We're looking at the period since 2012 right up to July 18th, 2025. And what makes this interesting, really, is that finding consistent, hard data for a public space like this, it's tough. It's scarce. So, yeah, we're definitely working with informed estimates here. Understanding the assumptions we made is pretty crucial.
Okay, right. Let's unpack that. So our sources kind of point out this first big challenge. No public records of visitor numbers, no counters clicking people in. But they do mention this phrase, claimed since 2012, which sort of hints at a big revitalization kicking off around then. So where did you even begin to, sketch out the foot traffic numbers?
Good question. We started with a baseline figure we found. It came from Target Point. They're an outdoor media company. They track physical foot traffic using mobile data, And for late 2021, early 2022, they cited about 240,000 monthly visits in that area. So we used that as a sort of anchor point. Then looking back, we had to make some, informed assumptions about growth, knowing how La Placita really became this cultural hotspot. For 2012 to 2015, as things were really picking up, we estimated maybe 100,000 visitors per month. Then from 2016 up to 2019, as it got even more popular, we bumped that up to around 150,000 a month.
Okay, 150,000. But then obviously 2020 hit the pandemic. How did that affect things?
Right. So for 2020 and 2021, we definitely factored in a big dip initially. And then a recovery period, we averaged it out to about 120,000 monthly for those 2 years. And then starting in 2022 and going right through to mid-July this year, we went back up using that higher figure, 240,000 monthly. That reflects its, strong comeback.
Wow. Okay. So pulling all those different periods together, what's the grand total, the estimated foot traffic over more than a decade?
So when you add up all those segments, 2012 right through to July 18th, 2025, the total estimated foot traffic for La Placita works out to approximately 25,080,000 visitors.
25 million. That really puts the sheer scale of kind of engagement into perspective, doesn't it? But okay, traffic's one part. How do we then link that to the actual economic activity, the money changing hands?
Right. That's the next piece of the puzzle. We introduced two key assumptions here. First, look, not everyone walking through actually spends money. We had to estimate a sort of conversion rate. We went with 15%, meaning we estimate about 15% of those visitors actually make a purchase or spend money there. Second, for those who do spend, we needed an average spend per visit. We estimated about $25 per person. That's meant to cover, maybe buying something small at the market, grabbing a meal, a couple of drinks. It feels like a reasonable ballpark figure based on similar kinds of urban market or nightlife areas.
Okay, so over 25 million estimated visitors. Apply that 15% conversion and the $25 average spend. What does that give us for the sort of direct economic bottom line?
Okay, so if you take the 25.08 million visitors and 15% of them are converting, that's about 3,762,000 people spending money. Multiply that by the $25 average spend, and we get an estimated direct economic impact of approximately $94,050,000.
$94 million. Okay. So, stepping back, what does this all really tell us? This deep dive seems to show a really impressive scale for La Placita, doesn't it? Over 25 million estimated visits since 2012, generating, like you said, roughly $94 million in just direct economic activity. And our sources even hinted that if you factor in multiplier effects, how that money gets respent locally by vendors, workers, that number could jump quite a bit higher, maybe around $141 million. That really does start to show the hidden value.
It really does. And, it brings up a pretty important question, I think. How do we actually get better at appreciating the full value, the multifaceted value of these cultural hubs and public spaces, especially when the usual data points just aren't there? What else can we learn if someone did a really focused study on, say, detailed spending habits or how money truly circulates from a place like La Placita?
Absolutely. It makes you think about your own community, right? What stands out to why you, listening right now, about how we measure the pulse, the life of our own public spaces? And what kind of stories do these numbers, even if they are estimates, really tell us about how communities come back to life and get people engaged?